She's outspoken. She's not afraid to ask tough questions. She's not afraid to speak her mind. You've read her column. Maybe you're a fan on Facebook. No topic is off limits. Straight to the point. There's no chaser. You're now watching Straight Talk with Carla Zuill.
And we're back with Straight Talk, and with us in studio we have Chris Crumpler, Executive Director of Team Street Safe Bermuda. Now, Mr. Crumpler, let's go in about with the gang activity. We've seen the violent element of the gangs die off for a while, and then we've just recently had another shooting murder and another shooting.
Not gang related. Continue.
Well, I was gonna say, is it safe to assume, or is it dangerous to assume that every shooting is gang related?
It is dangerous to assume every shooting is gang related, because from our intelligence, and police will kind of have a formal report, but every shooting is not gang related. That's number one. And number two is, it's our job is to advocate for that population, because these type of things continues to spiral their negative perception of the community on them, and why they're so hard to fight the label that they've been given, even if they paid the dues for their crime, even if they paid the hardships of losing friends and family, that they still can't get rid of that label, even if they didn't even do anything, because somebody else shot a gun. And that means that everybody that was considered a gang member is connected to that incident.
Well, and that leads me to my next question. Can someone who is, whether they are or were a gang member, or even just affiliated by neighborhood, by, activities, etc., can they have a fresh start in Bermuda?
They can. It'd be extremely hard because of Bermuda, not because of them. They're ready. The guys that we work with, they are ready to try. They are ready to do. They are ready for a chance. But the reality is, Bermuda's not ready. Bermuda's not ready to accept this population. Bermuda's not ready to move out of the way and put them on the stage. Bermuda's not ready to patch and heal and mend every area of their life, even if it costs them losing a bit of their own security and comfort. Bermuda wants you to deal with that out there somewhere, but don't inconvenience me at all.
So if they want a new life, basically, it seems like they have to leave Bermuda.
No, I just think we have to be very creative in and patient in how we matriculate that change, that transformation, and understand that the situation is very sensitive, and take it one day at a time. Like I said, I do believe there is hope, but the reality is, as parts of the segment of society that has to accept the fact that they have to give up something for the population. We're all family. If I talk to you long enough, even if I didn't know you today, I would know you. That's just how Bermuda is. And so you're gonna know these guys in some capacity. So the reality is, for you to accept them, you have to step aside to the left or right, or front or back, in some form or fashion, whether it be in finances, housing, education, something. And to understand that if you empower these young men, they will empower Bermuda. And I always say this when it comes to being a nonprofit. You keep giving the women and children, you're gonna always have to keep giving the women and children, because you're leaving out the key element to a community, a man.
Man.
Because if you support a man in the proper way that man needs support, he would take care of the woman and he would raise the child. But when you just ostracize, marginalize, and just push it to the side, you're gonna always have to keep coming back and feeding children, giving to women, and supporting those services, because the piece that we're not addressing is not that the women is messed up or the children is messed up. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the man is not present.
But then some will say that, you know what, we don't have time to do that. We just need to strengthen what already exists. Why should I have to teach a man a man who's acting like a boy to be like a man?
Because you never taught him how to be a man. When did you teach him how to be a man? When? And I'm a man, you're a woman, we still figuring this thing out. If you be honest with yourself, as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, you're still learning. So imagine having key fundamental pieces missing: a father, steady home,
Education.
those pieces are just missing. And then you're constantly operating on a secondary trauma and how you process life. So you're constantly in this survival mode of operating. But you're old, and so you should be a man, and you should give, and you should serve, and you should be still and steadfast and unmovable. That sounds good to ideal, but the reality is we never built that from the bottom.
No, you are a pilot program. You serve, you said 25, and there could be as many, say as little, let's go on the least end, 70. So that's about a quarter, give or take, a third, give or take, of the population. Do you think that the violent element of the gang activity will die off?
I do. Why get into this wholeheartedly if I didn't? Like to stroke my ego, to get a job up the corporate ladder. Like, no, my whole purpose is to make my job totally voluntary.
Or what do you think is the number one cause for the violence?
I mean, violence is going to happen, period. I think that's part of human life in some aspect. But when it comes to gang violence, it's part of that culture that I have to respond based on something else that happened. And so it's not necessarily trying to stop violence, it's trying to address those needs. And so by addressing the basic needs, your life starts to go off into different social circles. It starts to go off into different employment opportunities, starts to go into different educational circles. But if you're always caught up in the street life, it's only a matter of time you become a victim of that culture.
Okay, you say that, but prior to 2009, there were very rare occasions when there were shootings. Everyone knows about the 4-2 Parkside War, for example, but has anyone been able to pinpoint what was the specific incident or something that happened that made this gun violence just take off?
No, I mean, we haven't came across like the pinpoint reason, but what we do know is that it put people in uncomfortable circumstances, in a position. Like if somebody came and killed your brother and then dissed you about it had to have a response, you know what I mean? And the response that seemed to fit was a tick for tat. But it's not something that you was wanting to do ultimately. It was just, you want to chill with your brethren, make some money, and give back to your community. But once the violent piece happened, it made you have to respond. It made you have to do something to just show your loyalty to who you are and who you represent. Yeah.
Let's explain something, first of all. You guys are independent of the police as well. So I'm sure you've come across sensitive information. If you have, in the sense of, has anyone said to you, I regret doing insert whatever blank?
Wow. I mean, they haven't said the word regret, but you can just tell in some of the conversations that they're wishing it had to come to this point. You know what I mean? Because it's making it hard for everybody. I mean, in a general sense, the population is tired. Like, they're tired. They want to move on.
The gang population?
Yes. It's just the reality is they're being honest too. They're saying, number one, I don't know how much those guys are going to let it go. And number two, I don't know how much Bermuda's willing to really give me a second chance. And so we try to just stay positive in our conversations and making sure that they continue to go forward regardless of what they're feeling, and be a support system to that, because it's scary. You know what I mean? That is a scary leap, but the life they live, man, is not healthy.
And what is the average age of the clients that you service?
The average age, I would say, between 23.
So I know that you're not a social agency as such, but for a mother who feels that they're losing their preteen son to the streets, you see the back end of it. I know you talked about letting them go at, say, 17, 18, but what about at that young age when they're starting to drift? What can parents or people in the community do to save that boy?
Stop lying to yourself. I remember one time I was in middle school and this guy wanted to promote his rap lyrics. And I had a beatbox with those, we actually had cassette players where you used to record the radio and all
on
that.
one side, right.
So I put the cassette tape in and it had cursing on it. I didn't know it. I was just a guy trying to promote this stuff, but it had cursing, but it was in my father's house. I already told you about my dad. I had my dad walking down the hallway, right? And I try to hurry up and cut it off, like, pause and act like I'm playing the Sega Genesis, right? So he said some choice words. He grabbed the cassette tape and broke it in half, right? And then he slapped me down. And then he told me some things that let me know what the boundaries are for me and my family and our house. And I think for some, so like my mom, she would have had a nice conversation. She would have said, baby, you're getting on my nerves. But my dad looked me straight in the face and said, don't you ever do it again. That's all we needed to, I didn't justify my behavior. And when I walk around the street sometimes, I'm seeing kids on bikes in the community and I'm listening to the music and I'm watching the drinking and I'm watching the drove. And I'm saying, come on now. So whose fault is it really? The young men are in their position because we put them in this position. It's not their fault. They're only a replication of what society has produced. So if the society don't like what it's producing, change what you're doing. Change what you're watching. Change what you're listening to. So for me, like, my house this morning was church music all morning long. I'm cooking breakfast. I saw my children, and my son's 4 years old. Daddy, we're going to church? We're going to church. You understand? You set the pace of what they're going to be. But if you sit there and say, well, I'm tired and I used to listen to this music and I just want to have a good time, you have a child. You have children. You've taken away your primary options. You are now a secondary. You think about what's going to be the best situation. Sometimes I don't feel like going and reading to my children after a long day of work. I want them just to go to sleep. But I want them to have a vivid image of their father reading to them and kissing them on the forehead before they go to bed. Now, it's a lot of things I don't feel like picking them up at the car when they fall asleep. I feel like, hey, wake up. I want to make them inconvenient sometimes. But if I want them to see what they should be one day, I have to be it. I can't talk about it. I have to be it. If you want them to be what you want them to be one day, you have to show it. You have to show your investment. And it's a community piece, man. You know what I mean? And we got to stop lying to ourselves, man. Yeah, man, the boy should be, you're encouraging violence. You're encouraging womanizing. You're encouraging being selfish and self-righteous and self-centered. You're encouraging bragging about yourself and not bragging about your family or community. You're encouraging it.
Now, on the back end, what about a man in the sense of age who realizes that he's fallen short and wants to do better?
And that's where we find ourselves in our first year, where there's a gap in service. And I know it's a lot of people trying, I know it's some church service, or I know it's some men groups, but it needs to be a full-fledged, full-time service for men. That's the bottom line. I'm very fortunate. I call into a conference call every morning with men who own companies, who are multimillionaires, who I get resources from how to deal with my day-to-day. Well, I know the other young men don't have that. But it has to be a place where they can consistently tap into about growth, about empowerment, about restoration, about revival, about renewal. And we have it in pockets, we have it in segments, and we have it in pieces. But people are not able to commit to the process of change fully because of other obligations that they're trying to survive themselves in this country. But there is a great need for a men's resource center that is consistent, that is every day, that is on call. And we do have things there, but the reality is, how effective are you? You know what I mean? Like for me, like I said, because I play ball, and because I know the gift of gap, because I used to do this and do that, I know how to cross over. And so I'm able to teach them that on just a basic level. Because that's what they want to learn, how to speak both languages, both the street and the social aspects of where you're trying to go and be. But they have to be taught through mentorship. And so sometimes you got somebody doing it, but it's like a 60-year-old man who's retired and can't really connect.
Right.
So sometimes that's needed, but you need to have that crossover dynamic where I can still get in there and play kick with y'all, or I can still slap box, or I can still joke, or I can still whatever. But at the same time, I can show you how you talk to a person and why.
Now, one last question before we go. If I commit a crime, for example, it would be, you know, Carla Zuill from Pembroke who was drunk driving. But if someone who's known as a gang member commits a crime, it's Chris Crumpler, leader of this and so gang, and it's on the front page. What role do you think the media plays in this mentality towards labeling people as gang members, whether they are or not?
Huge. Whatever you focus on grows, right? And I just deal with this with the son, you know, about our collaboration with Habitat for Humanity. And I was like, we was going over and over, what are you going to put? What are you going to say and how are you going to spin it? Because you say one thing and then the headline comes out the next day different. We want to glorify progress. We want the image to be consistently showing them in progressive states and minds and conversations and actions. Don't bring up gang and gangsters and don't be glorifying those in the headlines. Like, focus on men getting better, men about change, men improving the community. Like, keep that going over and over and let their friends see it. Let the middle school kids see it. Let them start the conversation and having it. And because when it's always, I Google you on Royal Gazette, I Google you on, and your name comes up and you're in handcuffs, you're wearing this, the police is next to you. It's like, that's tough. You know what I mean? And so.
And it's permanent.
Yeah, so you try your best to work with everybody in every aspect, even the media, about, don't think about you. Don't think about your ratings. Don't think about how cool it would be to put that in. And think about, is this helping the population? That's what I left the news right. Like, whatever you put out there, I want you to tell me that it's helping us, that it's helping the men. I don't forget me. Is it helping them? Whatever, every line you write on the newspaper, is it helping them? Or is it damaging that population? You know what I mean? And so your goal, your prayer is that people operate with integrity and intent to have a sense of character that's, no matter what they do, that they do it with a sense of justice and understanding that you have a piece to play in how the world perceives this population.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And that's it for another edition of Straight Talk. I'm your host, Carla Zuill, and we'll be back next week.
You have a topic you'd like to discuss on Straight Talk? Send an email to talk@channel82.pm. Thanks for watching Straight Talk with Carla Zuill.